The start to this week. So much so that football was kind of gone out the window. Well, we're about to be brought back to reality with a hell of a bump as Arsenal travel to the San Siro to face Inter Milan in their toughest Champions League game of the league phase. This is the Arsenal Preview Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is our Arsenal preview show. Joining you every single match day pre-eve. I suppose match day's eve is probably the best way to put it. Of course, with it being Champions League football returning for Arsenal this week. I'm joined, as always, by one of the members from our Discord server to have a chat about the game. And this week I'm joined by Garrett. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. It's been an interesting week, and the Edu news obviously thrown another spanner in the works. So, yeah, we'll have a chat, but yeah, interesting times.
Yeah, let's start with that. Obviously, I know that maybe people are a little bit exhausted with Edu by this point because we've talked about it for the last 3 days. But I think it'd be remiss of me if I didn't ask you. So, give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, first of all, I think it was a shock. If I'm not wrong, I think there was some maybe murmurs of something during the summer,
Yeah, a few
potential.
months ago, there were suggestions that
Yeah,
the Forest owner was interested. Yeah, that came out.
so I remember seeing them thinking maybe not really much of it at the time. And then obviously Ornstein broke the news. Yeah, well, about 3 days ago. So it was a shock to me, to be honest. I didn't expect it at all. And look, some of the discourse online has been just crazy, as you'd expect. Unfortunately, um, I mean, look, overall, I think he was pretty good. I mean, look, the standout misses, I suppose, to me would be Vieira. Unfortunately, I had high hopes. But it's worked out. I don't think that's harsh to say. I just don't think it has, unfortunately. But look, overall, I think the thing people seem to get in their head as well is it's all on him or it's all on Arteta. Like, this is not one person is not responsible for these decisions, and that's something that just seems to go over people's heads. And he was kind of the brunt of a lot of online, I guess, abuse, really, I guess, or
Yeah.
whatever. People just targeting him when really, yes, he was part of the decision, but it wasn't him. He wasn't the end decision maker,
Mm.
if you know what I mean.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're absolutely. I think you summed it up really well, and clearly aligned with kind of a lot of what I've said as well over the last couple of days. It was a shock. It was a surprise, and I don't think it's something that Arsenal will move on from quickly. It will be because it's come at a moment that was a surprise to us as fans, to the club to a degree as well. It's also interesting that it's kind of a resignation at this point. Like, he's not, from the looks of it, he's going to be staying into the end of the season, then leaving, as you have seen with other, people that are higher ups in other clubs. We saw it ourselves with Vinay Venkatesham. He saw out his periods until the end of last season before Richard Garlick stepped into the managing director role. It's been a very quick kind of process in this essence. I think the idea of the move to the Marinakis group has been a longer process behind the scenes and very, much quieter. But this actual situation of it really coming to the fore has seemingly happened quite quickly. Of course, that's left Arsenal needing to now refocus. Do you feel in any way it will distract Arteta or the players in these upcoming games?
I don't know. I suppose they can't really let it affect them. To be honest, the position we've put ourselves in the league, it isn't great. We've dropped too many points. It's just the reality of it. So I don't think it can. I mean, Inter, as we'll discuss, it's going to be a tough game. So I don't think they can let it. But look, obviously, because it is a important figure behind the scenes leaving, so it's going to have some effect. But really, I don't think they can let it affect them massively on the pitch because it could worsen the situation we're already in. Really.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and hopefully we don't see any of it impact things. And I mean, I'm not going to ask you for names, but who you want as replacement, because it's impossible really to ask that. But just to round off this topic, what type of but do you like the idea of it being kind of a former Arsenal player, or are you open minded to an external appointment?
No, I think the best man for the job should get it, or best person for the job. Really, it shouldn't be a case of we're looking for ex pros or even ex Arsenal players. I think no, best person for the job should get the job, and it shouldn't be anything like
Mm.
that. Has to happen.
Oda says, "Does this mean that the Forest owner might triple Tom's wages and he could start doing a Nottingham Forest podcast?" Say it ain't so. There's no price on my head, mate. Don't you worry. I'm going nowhere. No amount of money could make me switch. So Inter Milan is obviously the game we got. We should probably cover some of the news. And for the context of those listening, Mikel Arteta have a press conference this evening at the San Siro. We aren't aware of his answers. I'll be discussing the press conference in tomorrow morning's 8 a.m. show. So if you're listening to this on catch up or however, and you're wondering why hasn't Tom talked about the presser, it's because this is recorded and of course went out live before that. So we don't really have his Arteta's thoughts on that. So tune in tomorrow's 8 a.m. show for that. But what we do know is who trained and who didn't train in the open training session from this morning before the team travelled out. The two bits of big news. The first one, Martin Ødegaard did train and has travelled. So that is a huge boost to the sides, Garrett, and him being back could not have come at a more necessary time, perhaps.
No, absolutely. I think we were, to be honest, we're in dire need. I mean, just the lack of creativity over the last two games has just been tough to watch, to be honest, and it's been almost a flashback. Like it's been a flashback to almost 3 years ago. I remember that awful time when Eddie Lacazette, we just couldn't score a goal, and it was just a horseshoe, round, and there was just no central, penetration. It was just, that was tough, and it's been tough. So we need him back, and it's great time.
Absolutely. I'd be surprised if he was in the starting 11. I think he'll probably be on the bench tomorrow and perhaps get some minutes. Who knows if he's going to be ready enough for the starting 11 on the weekend against Chelsea. It's worth pointing out, actually, that Norway are not going to call Ødegaard up. I think I saw that a little bit later on earlier. Ødegaard is back in training, but will be absent from the Norway squad. James McNicholas at The Athletic reporting that earlier on today. So that's again, it's interesting because do you feel like there's then pressure on Arteta to not really use him too much to justify him not going to the Norwegian national side?
Yeah, I think he would have had a bit of a bee in his bonnet after the whole last thing, where Ødegaard actually got injured. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one. Because obviously, remember the last time something like this happened with Martinelli.
Yeah,
the Brazilian FA weren't best pleased with Arsenal after that. So yeah, it can be tricky to navigate. But I'd say this, like Arteta, I imagine, has done everything in his power to make sure Ødegaard doesn't go.
You would sincerely hope so. You'd sincerely hope that was the case, and that Arsenal, of course, are being cautious as well with him. Are going to look after his minutes and let him come back gradually. If he starts against Chelsea, I would be surprised. If he starts tomorrow night, I'll be utterly and entirely shocked. But to see him back in the squad is definitely a positive. The other bit of news isn't so good, and that's that Declan Rice has not travelled with the Arsenal team to Milan. He is not going to be in the squad tomorrow, which is, of course, I mean, how much more bad news can Arsenal fans really get, at this stage, Garrett? It's getting kind of ridiculous how many injuries we're suffering. It doesn't seem like it's serious. It seems more like they're not taking any risks with him before Chelsea at the weekend. I've got two questions off the back of that. The first, your reaction. And the second, does that perhaps show how important they're viewing the Chelsea game, perhaps in comparison to this game?
Yeah, so the first one, Rice absence. Yeah, it's big. It's obviously big. I think he's been good this season, but I don't think he's been at his level, and I think he's even said it himself. He's kind of playing himself back up to speed. Because really during the summer he was, how much of a break did he get? I mean, I can't imagine it was very long. Getting to the Euros final, matter of weeks, I'd say, if even.
Yeah.
So, like he's been trying to play himself back into fitness, back into form as well. So, look, I suppose we've just got to cross our fingers. It is an injury, as you said, because him missing for Sunday, I think, would be very bad. Second part you asked again. What was the second part about him?
Oh, sorry. The second part was, do you therefore think that they're viewing the Chelsea game as more important than Inter?
I think potentially.
Is it for you?
It's a tough one because I could obviously say yes, it is, but then we could look back in a few months and say, well, if we got a point away at Inter or one, who knows? That could be the difference between us going through or not. So, reluctant to say it's definitely more important, but if you look at it in the way that I think we got lucky. Well, Man City weren't great in the weekend, but had they won, we'd lost. We would have been, I believe, 8 points. And then if we'd lost again this weekend, God forbid, it could be 11, which is just a massive gap that's early on. So I think they'll be
Mm.
looking at it like they maybe got a little bit lucky last weekend. Obviously, Liverpool now sort of more even.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say they're really eyeing up that Chelsea game that as one we have to win. To be honest, we just have to win it.
Yeah, we absolutely have to beat Chelsea. If we lose that game, the idea of Arsenal being in a title race is near impossible to foresee. Even a draw, I don't think is enough. But a win tomorrow against Inter, a win at Chelsea would, I think, in the same way, transform the view of Arsenal in some ways again as well, and really, I think bring back a feel good factor that's been missing, not just for the fans, but I think for the players, and to give them that belief that they are good enough, to beat and compete in these big games and to re-enter the title race. What do you think of Inter Milan as kind of a challenge tomorrow? Because there's been so much attention on the Premier League, so much attention on Arsenal's title challenge that Arsenal's Champions League situation is healthier. They sit, I think, ninth at the moment in the Champions League table. Yeah, they are ninth, and it's the top 8, of course, that automatically qualify. If Arsenal win against Inter Milan, they will go above them in that table and get a 3-point lead on a significant number of their rivals and put them in a really good stead in terms of that table. So, but at the same time, Inter Milan are an incredibly tough prospect. They sit second in Serie A at the moment. They're only a point off leaders Napoli, who themselves have been very, very impressive. They've won 7, drawn 3, lost 1, scored 25 goals, conceded just 13. So what are your thoughts?
It's going to be tough. And to be honest, based on the last few games, I don't expect it to be a great watch. Unless we can really just, flip the switch, which, look, I hope we can. But I think, yeah, it could be just a bit of a stalemate. I hope not, obviously, but they're a very solid team defensively. And even offensively as well. Look, they've got the likes of Martinez, Thuram, very tidy player, and then wing backs as well. DeMarco has been solid for quite some time now, and then Dumfries on the other side. Look, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be very tricky. Yeah, it's a tricky away one, and probably do need to win it. But I mean, that's it's easier said than done.
Some interesting breaking news. I know this is kind of breaks the flow of this show. It relates against the Edu story. Semi Mokbel of the Mail has reported that Arsenal fought to try and prevent Edu from leaving the club and made a counter offer believed to be similar to that made by Nottingham Forest. Of course, Forest, we heard from the Independent, suggested that they'd made an offer that would more than treble Edu's wages at Arsenal. And a lot of people this morning in the comment section were like, well, can you really blame Edu? They're trebling his wages. Well, according to this latest report, Edu seems to have turned down an offer that is said by Sami Mokbel of the Mail, is obviously the person who broke the story initially, very well connected in this story, in this thread, claims that a deal was similar made by Arsenal that was turned down. Does that change your view of that in any way?
It does a bit, because for me, if Arsenal were willing to, in or around match the salary that Forest were going to give him, part of me thinks then why wouldn't you try and see out, kind of the work you've put in over the last 3 years? I'm struggling a bit more with it now. You know what I mean? When I hear that, because then I look triple times your salary. Anyone I think can appreciate that's massive, and a massive incentive to leave and take on this new role. But if we were willing to offer him similar, there must be something more to it for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Damien says it here. There's got to be something going on behind the scenes. People talk about, he wanted to progress, that he wanted to take perhaps a bigger role within Arsenal, especially with Vinay Venkatesham, who left, who was a CEO. Richard Garlick's moved to a managing director role. It was there, and I'm completely speculating here with no inside info on this side of it, but I have seen some people have discussions where they've suggested that perhaps was a role that Edu wanted within the club, not made available to him. I remember when Sven Mislintat had a similar situation, actually, where I think he wanted the role that Edu was given as technical director. He was head of recruitment at Arsenal at the time, and they gave that role to Edu, and Sven Mislintat parted ways pretty soon around that time as well. So it's not like this isn't a situation that Arsenal have had before, where internal existing members of their hierarchy have wanted higher roles that's been denied to them, and then they've since left. I don't know if that's the case here, but I think that the idea that Arsenal reportedly, according to Sammy, have offered a similar salary, kind of negates the argument that some put forward earlier this morning when we were discussing this, and yesterday, that when you're offered that amount of money, you make the move. Because if it was a similar case, even if the role is bigger, I think that the intention, the idea of staying and completing what you've started, there's a greater argument that is worthy of criticism there, I think, for Edu. From my perspective, I already had that point of view before we even was aware of this information that's coming out. So that's very, very interesting indeed. Getting back, though, to the game tomorrow, we'll talk more about that Edu story, of course, in tomorrow morning's 8 a.m. show as well. The lineups that, Garrett, you've gone for, talk us through your selection.
Yeah, so the back four, I put Timber in at left back. I mean, Calafiori, I think still no turning next week, this week. So obviously he's won't be in the picture. I know Zinchenko played some minutes, but I've still gone for Timber instead. Gabriel Saliba, I put White back in. Hope I'd at least start him. If he kind of fitness becomes an issue later on in the game, we can swap him out. But I'd start him for me. The midfield now, I suppose this is where I've just gone for some change, because I think we need to see something different. The stuff that we've seen over the last few games it just isn't working for me. The creativity isn't there, and just progressing the ball centrally through the pitch, it's just been non-existent. And watching the horseshoe, just the back and forth, it kills me. It really does. So I've put Nwaneri in midfield. But obviously, if Ødegaard was fit, I would put him in. But I think, as you said, I think it'd be crazy, to be honest, to start Ødegaard. We need to wrap him up and cotton wool as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Nwaneri here is a big call. Why not Trossard is the question.
Yeah, look, for me, I can see it, to be fair, as well. Trossard, for me, I prefer what Nwaneri brings. I find he kind of holds the ball better for me. He doesn't. Not that Trossard's very bad at losing the ball.
No.
I just think Nwaneri has that better ability to operate in that central area. I think Trossard, he does a good job. Don't get me wrong, but for me, I prefer Nwaneri there.
And Bukayo Saka to get back to his best as your star player too, I see.
Yeah, look, I mean, given the kind of way we've been struggling recently, I think the good bits that we have seen have come from Saka. It's just a fact. So, unfortunately, I imagine it will be, well, unfortunately, I say, but you know what I mean? As in, based on the past few games, I imagine if something does happen and we manage to flip the switch, it will be because of this man right here. He's, he always steps up for us, and I don't doubt if there's someone to do it, it'll be him again.
Well, there's no change to your lineup for me. That's the exact same team that I would go for in this scenario, with no Rice, Partey coming in, Merino being there. What I'll be interested to see is if Merino's better with a better progressive passer with him in the midfield that Partey is. Rice is excellent and progresses the ball in his own way, which tends to be on the ball rather than with passes. But Partey is obviously a better progressive passer than Rice is. And Moreno, I think, will benefit from having that type of... I'll also think he'll benefit when Ødegaard obviously eventually returns to the team as well. And that's going to be big. But Partey's been... I think over the last couple of games, I was previously of the mind that I think Rice was slightly edging it. But I think Partey in the last couple of games has retaken that lead for me in terms of who's been the more impressive this season between the two of them. Even in games where we've disappointed, I think he's shown up, and it's certainly not been fingers really pointed at him for his displays in those games at all. Deepak says, though, we should be saving legs for Sunday, which we neither of us have done. No, with this team, this is probably the strongest team that we could pick. Perhaps Trossard for Nwaneri, Arteta may still go with. I really hope he doesn't. I really hope he does go with Nwaneri here. I think he's got... After Trossard struggles at the weekend, after, Nwaneri coming on in games and impressing, and with Ødegaard slowly coming back, it's a great opportunity to use Nwaneri here, and also to use Trossard from the bench where he's more impactful, it seems, for us right now. So how much more could we afford to rotate, really, and not avoid being pretty well humbled?
I really don't think I think this is what we have to put out. I'll be honest. I really don't think we can rotate much. I mean, Inter Milan are no joke. I think if we rock up with a team that's heavily rotated, I think it could be bad. I really do. And what's that do for our confidence going into the Chelsea game? I mean, if we were to get heavily beaten away, I just think it'd be terrible for us. And also, given the past few games we've had as well, I really don't think we can afford to rotate any more than this. I really don't.
No, neither do I. Havertz my star man as always, hoping that he has a really big performance. Some people have been saying, he needs to have some better away performances. We know he had that really good scoring record at the Emirates. And, I think that's a fair analysis. I think he does need to do some more away from home. He has scored in big games away from home. Spurs, Manchester United, scored in these big games for us before. So there's definitely evidence that he does and can do that. So let's hope that he can rock up for us again. But I guess one player I was on with Sophie, Harry, and Lee the other day on Highbury Squad, and Harry said he wanted to see more of Jorginho. So was there any shout here, perhaps with his knowledge as well of Italian football, that he could have been a pick for the team?
Yeah, it did cross my mind. The only thing I think with Jorginho is I don't like dropping him in cold. I don't think he's had that many minutes, and for me, I think dropping him in here in this sort of a game, I just don't think would be a good idea.
Did he start against Preston? Did he start that game? He might have done. He might have started against Preston. So I know what you mean, like in terms of he's not played a lot of minutes at all.
Yeah.
I suppose if he did start, and I think he did start against Preston, that might allow some argument, I suppose, in that sense.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think I imagine he'll feature, to be honest, I do. But yeah, for me, I just went with but it did cross my mind for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll see what Mikel Arteta goes for tomorrow. It's going to be very interesting to see what the 11 is, how strong it is, what changes are made, whether we go strong, whether we rotate, whether somebody like Sterling, of course, who's not going to be in the squad on Sunday because he can't play against his parent club, of course, is going to get a significant number of minutes to give the likes of Martinelli a rest. And just in general, like Inter Milan are an incredible side. And, I've got a very, very good manager as well. And I think that is the last time that Arsenal played Inter Milan. Was it with the Invincible side during that 03-04 season when we won 5-1? I'm just doing a quick check on our history head to head. That's the last time Arsenal played Inter, was the 2003-04 season where we lost 3-0 at home and then won 5-1 away. So it's quite the historic game, for Arsenal. It's not a fixture we see too often, these two clubs playing one another. So that's going to be exciting. But we'll go to predictions to round things off. Garrett, scoreline and scorers, please.
Yeah, I'll be an optimist and I will say 2-1. I will go Saka and Havertz. But yeah, look, I'm not sure it'll be the best watch. I really don't. But look, hopefully we
well, we've got Mourinho against an Italian manager, so it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and it's going to be very interesting tactical game. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Arsenal win. I'm going to go with Kai Havertz to get that goal, and if it is 1-0 to the Arsenal, I'd run from Milan with that result, without question. But I see the mood in the chat box is low. Damien says 2-0 Inter. Recent performances have given me no reason for optimism. Jonathan says, unfortunately, 1-0 Inter. Rancid says 2-1 Arsenal, Marino and Jesus. King said he smells a 0-0. I'm hoping for a boring 1-0 Arsenal, Saka to score. Deepak agrees with Jonathan as well on that, with a 1-0 Inter Milan scoreline. This is the first time I've really seen the pessimism bleed into the chat box for quite some time. It tells you how low the mood is, Garrett, right now. And I can understand that because of the results recently. And I've said for so long, I felt like we were in a position where I don't go into any game fearing the opponent. For so many of these last couple of years, that's how I felt. And that's the way Arsenal have made me feel. But there is a fragility, it seems, about us right now.
Yeah, I think that little bit of kind of anxiety before the games that kind of used to pop up a few years ago, it's kind of creeping back in a bit. And look, I think, as you said, if we won this and Chelsea, that's 2 big statement wins. I think that could flip it again. So it's a quickly changing situation. You know what I mean? I think 1 or 2 wins and we can be back on track. But it's just we're in the very bottom of the trough right now, I think. And yeah, look, I just hope we don't drop any further. Really.
Yeah, you're telling me. You're telling me. Paul says it's realism, and I respect that. I respect that realistic view of Arsenal right now. What have we got to go off to give us that confidence? Not much. But what we do know is this team on its day, and when it does return, and when we do start to click, it can beat absolutely anyone. So let's hope that turns out to be the case tomorrow, and of course on the weekend. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for a roundup of the press conference and more reaction to that story that we broke from Sami Mokbel, that Arsenal reportedly offered a similar wage structure and packet to Nottingham Forest's owner's offer to Edu as well, and it was turned down. He made that decision to leave and rejected a similar offer by Arsenal, it seems. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Arteta's press conference is later on this evening. You can follow that press conference on the Football.London website, of course. Kaya is over there and giving you a roundup and updates from the San Siro. And then, of course, I'll be with you tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, of course, as well, to do a roundup of the game against Inter. And if you're not able to watch the game for whatever reason, I will be doing a minute-by-minute commentary over on Football.London as well. So make sure you tune in for that. Garrett, thank you so much for your time, mate. Really appreciate it. Thank you for jumping in. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, no, as always, you can find me in the Discord. And as I say, yeah, join up and you can come on here. And it's, good chatting there. So, yeah.
Lovely stuff. Thank you once again. And thank you to those listening. Please do drop a like before you go and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. I'll be back, as I say, tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8 a.m. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.